Hello, and welcome to the Clinical Care Options Infectious Disease Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Swanson. Today's episode features content from an educational program titled Contemporary Management of HIV 2021. During this podcast, Dr. Joseph Eron from the University of North Carolina School of Medicine discusses innovative approaches in HIV prevention. For more information on Dr. Eron and a link to the full online educational program, including downloadable slides, please visit the show notes for this episode. Now, let's get started and hear what Dr. Eron has to say about agents under clinical investigation for HIV prevention.
So what about alternative methods? So dapivirine. Dapivirine is an NNRTI. So those of you who treat HIV, you know about efavirenz, nevirapine, rilpivirine. Those are all NNRTIs. Dapivirine is another NNRTI, and it was constructed to be in a flexible silicone ring. So this is a vaginal ring that women control. Men don't need to be involved in any way. So women, these go in the vagina and they last for about a month. In other words, this drug, dapivirine, leaks out of this ring, and the goal is to show that it protects from HIV infection. And there were two large studies. One was called Aspire. The other was called the Ring Study, and these were done in sub-Saharan Africa. They were multi-centered, randomized, double-blind, meaning women put in active rings and some women put in a placebo ring, and these were high-risk women. And the results, I guess there's kind of two ways to look at it. One is that they were a little bit disappointing. There was about a 20% protection rate, 27% in the Aspire study, 31% protection rate compared to placebo in the Ring study. So obviously very, very different than the original studies with TDF-FTC as a pill, at least in men who have sex with men, but not much different than the pills in women, which were much harder to show worked. And if you went and looked at the women who were older than 21. So there were a lot of young women in the study. And the women older than 21, the effectiveness was much better, about 56% compared to placebo in Aspire, and 37% compared to placebo in the Ring study. So not perfect by far. And again, it had to do mostly with using the ring, but even women who use the ring successfully, there were still some infections. So I had to wrap my head around that a little bit. There were two follow-on studies. These are open label studies. So open label means there was no longer a blind. One was called the HOPE study. And that was the open label for the Aspire. And the other was the DREAM study. That was the open label for the Ring. So HOPE and DREAM. So the advantage to open label is that there's no, we're giving you this ring. We think that it works. There's no placebo here. Just use it. These studies were presented by Jared Baton. You can see that in this group, the women were older, the ones that chose to go into the open label. So average age was 30 years old in both of the studies. But they were still relatively high risk, though many were married. A smaller percentage had STIs. Again, maybe not super high risk, but still at risk. And these are complicated slides, but basically in the open label part of the study, adherence was much better. 92% accepted the ring at enrollment. They said, yes, I want to take this ring now that you tell me it has active drug in it. It's going to, help me. Over time, some women did say, no, this isn't really working for me, but 73 persisted in accepting the ring over a year, over 12 months. And then they could look, the women had to bring the ring back. And you could actually see how much drug was left in the ring. And if it looked like about a milligram or 0.9 milligrams eluted or came out of the ring, that meant that the ring had been placed in the vagina for most of the period of time of that month. And it appeared that about 90% of the women returned rings that had been used, as best I could say, had been used for most of the month. So the use was better. The challenge is that, well, how do you know if it's no longer a placebo-controlled trial, it's open label, how do you know how well it was working? And so what the authors did, Jared Baton and many others did, is they looked at the placebo control group from the previous study, and they did actually limit it to people that looked like the women that went into the open label. And this is something called a counterfactual, which is a big word, but means we're comparing it to something outside the study. Because this placebo group was from before. It was not at the same time. But basically, in the HOPE trial, they observed about a 39% reduction. And in the DREAM trial, they observed what they would have predicted would be a 60% reduction. So they saw between a 40 and 60% reduction compared to placebo from the earlier trial. So what's the next step for this vaginal ring? Well, there have to be country approvals for this monthly ring, and it's being sought after in sub-Saharan Africa. The European Medicines Authority, that's the EMA, gave a positive opinion, and it has not yet been submitted to the FDA, but it's planned. And there are additional studies ongoing in adolescent girls and pregnant women and breastfeeding women. And they're actually going to try a higher dose ring that would go in and stay in for 3 months. And that is a study that's planned. So I think I would be curious, some of you are probably more experienced than me in talking to women about prevention. But here's a method that even if you use it, it's not perfect. I think what you can say about the TDF FTC pill or the TAF FTC pill or the injectable is that if you use it, it's very, very effective. The ring is still not perfect. But many women may choose it because they have control. They don't have to go to the doctor. They don't have to take a pill. And so it may be something that they would choose to use. I'm just going to talk about 2 new drugs really quickly, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions. These are drugs that are in early stage development. Okay, so these are not going to be in your hands in the next year or 2. Cabotegravir, the injectable, I'm pretty confident that that's going to be in your hands within a year. Islatravir is something that's coming, but it's very interesting. It is a drug that's similar to tenofovir and FTC, but a little different. It works by a slightly different mechanism. It is like TDF and FTC, has to be activated to a triphosphate form in your body. And it is very active against HIV and also HIV that's resistant to other drugs. And this is the part that's really interesting, is it's being investigated as an oral tablet once a month. So 1 pill a month, potentially. We don't have any data yet in terms of protection, but we have some pharmacokinetic data. And it may be also an implant, like the Nexplanon, the contraceptive implant, that could go in once a year. So that would be very different than what we have now. We do know that in animals, the islatravir is protective. So these are male rhesus macaques, a type of monkey that can get SIV, and giving these monkeys islatravir was protective. against SIV in a rectal challenge. So that's good news that we saw similar things with tenofovir FTC. And there's already a phase 2 study of once monthly pill to look at the PK. And very soon, there's going to be a phase 3 study, meaning a study that tests to see if the drug works in high risk women and high risk men and transgender women. These are the Empower studies that are going to hopefully start very soon. This is the implant. There are no prevention studies yet. That's a penny for those of you who never see change anymore because we all use our cards. So it's a pretty small implant, about twice the length, or you put 2 pennies in a row, that's about how long it is. And we know that at least in healthy volunteers, we know that the drug lasts a long time. You probably have to go with a higher dose implant. This went on for 12 weeks. And then they actually removed the implant because they didn't have, because they only had safety data to do this for 12 weeks. But the people who do the model felt that this medication would last 6 months or maybe even a year. So an implant that could last 6 months or a year. And this is the model suggesting that the drug would last up to 52 weeks. And so it's exciting, but that's a little farther in the future, but something to really look forward to. And at least in this healthy volunteer study, it was safe. When those of you who have used the Nexplanon implant, maybe some of you actually administer those Nexplanon implants, you can get some bruising that does occur, and there's some initial discomfort. That's not uncommon, but obviously that you only have that once a year. And then finally, lenacapavir. This is a capsid inhibitor. So lenacapavir, it's a capsid inhibitor. Islatravir is a NRTTI. So and lenacapavir is a capsid inhibitor, very potent. What's a picomole? Pico, it's 10 to the minus 12. It's like so small, it is really small. 10 to the minus 12 is really small. It's like 1,000,000 times smaller than a millimolar. So it's really small. It's very potent, and it can be given oral and subcutaneously. Lenacapavir has been studied as an injectable, and I'm just going to show you that as a single injection, one single subcutaneous, not IM, subcutaneous injection will last 6 months. 6 months with a single injection. You might notice it takes a while to get up there. So probably to start, people will have to take a couple of pills, a pill a day for 2 days, and then a pill 1 week later, and then they'll have their injection, which will last 6 months. And in that initial study, it really was quite safe. There was some induration and pain at the injection site, but again, it would be one injection every 6 months. So another thing to look forward to, though again, farther in the future. There are studies of lenacapavir for PrEP. There is a study in cisgender adolescent girls and young women. This is injectable lenacapavir every 6 months versus oral FTC-TAF or FTC-TDF. And the hope is to do that in Uganda and South Africa. And then in transgender men, or MSM, transgender women and transgender men and other non-binary individuals, it'll be lenacapavir every 6 months versus oral FTC-TDF. Those studies are planned. They are not started yet, but they're planned. And then it may be that clinical broadly neutralizing antibodies can work as PrEP. I'm going to just say quickly, there's some evidence that these broadly neutralizing antibodies will work, but we really do have a long way to go before those neutralizing antibodies are available.
Well, thank you very much to Dr. Eron, and thanks to you listeners for joining in. As a reminder, to view the full educational program on the Clinical Care Options website, click on the link in the show notes. And please be sure to check back regularly for more episodes on important infectious disease topics. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.